The Buddha once said that true spiritual practice isn't found in outward displays of merit. It lies in purifying our hearts and taming our egos right here and now. Today, let's explore a story that illustrates this principle. It shows us that even what seems like devout practice can lead to greater wrongdoing if we're not careful with our inner motives. Have you ever performed a good deed and felt sure your mind was free of distraction? But have you noticed that sometimes underneath those actions, there might be pride, coercion, or even a desire to show off? Our story focuses on a woman named Zhao, who did countless good deeds during her life, building virtue and helping others. Yet in the end, she met a fate beyond anything she could have imagined. Her story is a reminder that true practice isn't about mere appearances. It starts deep within the heart. Genuine merit flows from selfless intention, not from behavior that feeds personal vanity. In the judgment hall of the netherworld, King Yama sat high above at his bench, gripping the book of life and death, his expression stern as he looked down at a wandering spirit who was sobbing in front of him. This spirit was once a renowned benefactor in the city, a devout woman named Zhao. For 30 years, she ate only vegetarian meals, recited scripture daily, and cared little for money, often giving large sums to charity. Everyone in town, from the oldest resident to the youngest child, praised her. Yet who would have guessed that after she died, she would end up suffering terribly, devoured by a horde of malevolent spirits? By chance, Anan encountered her spirit on earth. Moved by both pity and curiosity, he came to the underworld to find out what had happened. King Yama regarded Anan, let out a heavy sigh, and slowly said, "This woman believed she was sincerely devoted to spiritual practice, but she made a grave mistake. Her story can serve as a warning to people everywhere." Alarmed, Anan asked, "Your Honor, what's the real story here?" King Yama held out his hand and opened the heavy book of life and death. It was full of detailed accounts of people's good and bad deeds. He flipped through a few pages, then stopped at one that looked particularly significant. His gaze turned solemn, as though it could pierce right through the page. "Zhao's life is the perfect example of what the word practice truly means," he said. "She was born into a wealthy family and married into the influential Liu household in the city. From the age of 20, she took refuge in the Triple Gem and began a path of strict devotion, eating only vegetarian meals and reciting daily prayers. Back then, she was truly sincere, with not a trace of mixed motives." As King Yama spoke, the Book of Life and Death gradually revealed scenes from Zhao's past. A younger Zhao knelt devoutly before an altar, chanting her vows to spend her life seeking goodness and spiritual practice. From then on, she rose before dawn each day, long before even the roosters started crowing, to recite sutras. She refused to eat after midday. While others relaxed or found entertainment at night, she remained in her prayer room, often kneeling in reverence until late. Everyone who witnessed her actions admired her, agreeing there was nothing false about her dedication. For 30 years, she never once broke her routine. King Yama went on. She had a private prayer space in her home where incense was always burning. On every festival and holiday, she gave generously to the monastery and helped those in need. Not a single monk or nun in the city doubted her sincerity. While he spoke, his finger glided across the entries in the book, and the scenes played out like a film. We saw Zhao deeply focused in her devotions, hurrying to give medicine to the sick, opening her storehouse to feed those who were cold and hungry, and teaching moral lessons on the 1st and 15th days of each month. She spoke with such conviction that many people came to hear her. Eventually, she was known throughout the city as the compassionate lady, respected by everyone. 10 years ago, the city was hit by a plague. It was truly horrible. People everywhere were falling ill. Without hesitation, Zhao sold her jewelry and used the money to help those stricken by disease. 5 years ago, floods destroyed the homes of many, and she donated food and resources to help survivors through the crisis. The previous year, a drought left the earth cracked and fields empty, and people were starving. Once again, Zhao stepped forward to provide relief for 3 straight months, saving many lives. All these acts of kindness were meticulously recorded in the Book of Life and Death. King Yama, running his finger along the detailed entries, explained the record as Anan listened in disbelief. Growing puzzled, Anan finally asked, "Your Honor, according to these records, Zhao accumulated enormous merit. She did so many good deeds. Why did she meet such a terrible end? King Yama sneered slightly. All those charitable acts you see on the surface are just a shallow reflection of practice, he replied. Be patient. Let me continue. The Book of Life and Death showed that Zhao's reputation only grew over time. Eventually, everyone in the city knew her name, and visitors flocked to see her. Her prayer room expanded, and more people became her followers. Outwardly, it seemed like she was devoutly spreading spiritual teachings and guiding others onto a compassionate path, her influence shining like a beacon. Then, half a year ago, everything changed. King Yama's voice suddenly turned cold. Zhao fell gravely ill. The illness was fierce, and she passed away not long after it appeared. As she died, a smile lingered on her face. Everyone around her assumed she had ascended to a blissful realm. No one imagined that the spirit Anand encountered was being pursued and torn apart by vicious demons, living in unimaginable torment. Looking grim, King Yama stood up. Those demons are the ones bearing grudges against her, he said. More confused than ever, Anand asked, but she lived her days in devotion, always careful not to do any harm. She never missed her daily practices. She gave alms on every holiday. She even tried to persuade her maids to eat vegetarian meals and recite prayers. How could she have incurred so many vendettas? King Yama stepped down from his bench and walked to the center of the hall. The lanterns inside flickered ominously, making his shadow stretch across the wall like a looming mountain. He spoke quietly. This is what makes it so frightening. She thought she was accumulating merit, but she was really creating new transgressions. She believed she was guiding others, but she was actually causing them harm. She thought she was acting with compassion, but in reality, she was fueling her own pride. At these words, several aggrieved spirits appeared in the scenes displayed by the Book of Life and Death. King Yama pointed toward them. Those who stand before you are the very people she mistreated. Some were household maids forced to follow her practices against their will. Some were neighbors she publicly shamed. Others were ordinary folk she looked down on. Filled with unease, Anand asked, what exactly did she do to negate 30 years of good deeds? It's almost impossible to believe. King Yama shut the heavy ledger and spoke in an even tone. Zhao's story should be spread across the world as a cautionary tale. Eating vegetarian meals and chanting prayers might look like spiritual practice, but if you don't grasp the heart of it, you can cause far greater harm. Regret often comes too late. His expression grew more intimidating, and an oppressive atmosphere filled the hall. Zhao's wrongdoing was subtle, not easily noticed from the outside, but it was more terrifying than you can imagine. In fact, it's worse than overt acts like stealing or harming others. It's more malicious than lying or cheating. Her life's work was undone by that single error, which is truly a pity. Anand's pulse was pounding. What sort of crime could wipe away 30 years of merit in an instant? He asked. King Yama's gaze grew intense, as if piercing through the veil of illusions in the living world. This is a sin that plays out every day on earth, though few truly see it for what it is. Look at Zhao. She seemed completely devout, but her biggest transgression was hiding harm behind the mask of spiritual practice. King Yama's voice rose in volume. Yes, she ate vegetarian meals and recited prayers daily, appearing every inch the devout practitioner. But she forced everyone in her household to do the same. Some maids didn't want to adopt a vegetarian diet, so she punished them by withholding food. Others didn't feel compelled to recite prayers, so she handed down harsh discipline. She convinced herself this was about saving souls, but she was really piling up grave karma. Anand nodded in sudden understanding. That explains why those spirits were her former maids. She abused them, and now they've become her tormentors. King Yama waved a hand, and the Book of Life and Death showed more scenes from Zhao's life. That's not even the whole story, he continued. On the surface, she seemed benevolent, but in reality, she constantly flaunted her charitable work. Whenever she helped the poor, she went out of her way to make sure everybody knew it was her doing. Even her almsgiving became a public spectacle to earn herself more praise. That's not genuine kindness. That's using the guise of kindness to feed her vanity. Even worse, King Yama's voice dropped to a darker register. like an echo from the deepest underworld. She believed that her years of practice made her superior to others. She looked down on anyone who ate meat, calling them sinners, and anyone who didn't recite prayers, calling them ignorant, harming people while claiming to help them. This is far more frightening than committing obvious misdeeds. It's more dangerous because it's so easily hidden. Anand asked, why is it more dangerous than open wrongdoing? I'm still not entirely sure I grasp the logic. King Yama answered icily, those who commit obvious sins know in their hearts they're doing wrong, so there's always a chance they'll repent. If they choose to turn back, they can still be saved. But someone like Zhao, she was convinced she was doing the right thing day after day. In truth, she was generating negative karma nonstop, yet she had no clue. She never recognized her mistakes, and that's what makes it so terrifying. By the time she came to her senses, it was already too late. Anand pressed on. So then, what does genuine practice look like? His eyes were full of the yearning for answers. King Yama seemed a bit more at ease and replied, real practice starts with a compassionate heart that treats everyone with kindness. You can't ever force others to follow your spiritual path. Lead by example instead. Let your actions naturally inspire others to do good. Second, you must constantly look within to spot the first stirrings of pride, and as soon as it arises, you have to confront it and let it go. Finally, you have to understand that the purpose of practice is to purify the mind and help all beings find relief from suffering. It's not about boasting of your own merit or seeking admiration for your charity, he added with a tone of earnest warning. Merely eating vegetarian meals and chanting prayers doesn't count as true practice if your heart isn't sincerely devoted to goodness. Even good deeds can backfire if your intentions aren't pure. You must ask yourself whether your heart is genuinely aiming to benefit others, whether you're truly nurturing compassion from within, or whether you're just pursuing your own interests. Concerned about Zhao's fate, Anand asked, what can be done for her now? Is she doomed to that torment of being torn apart by demons? King Yama sighed. Her current suffering is also a sort of revelation. When she fully realizes her mistakes and truly repents, when she grasps how wrong her actions were, she'll find release on her own. I hope she awakens soon. Before long, Zhao's story spread through both earthly and spiritual realms. King Yama often shared it with souls who arrived for judgment, warning them that practice isn't a matter of external forms alone. Vegetarian food and daily prayers are superficial. Real spiritual work depends on genuine intentions and actions. If you don't understand this, you could chant and abstain from certain foods for 100 years and still end up doing more harm than good, possibly bringing even worse consequences upon yourself. Many who heard Zhao's story started to reflect on their own lives. Were their so-called good deeds tainted by pride? Were they pushing people toward virtue in a way that felt more like force? Were they showing off whenever they made donations or helped someone in need? Even a seasoned judge in the underworld, upon hearing Zhao's tale, remarked, this story taught me a vital lesson. The goal of spiritual practice is to conquer the harmful thoughts in our own minds and cleanse our hearts. It's never about using some standard of practice to judge others or to lift ourselves above them. I've seen countless souls like Zhao over the years, and I truly hope people learn from her mistakes. Otherwise, by the time regret sets in, it's far too late. From Zhao's story, we see that the core of true practice lies not in outward rituals, but in sincerity and humility. Over-reliance on external trappings and disregard for one's inner motives can lead to catastrophic outcomes. May this story prompt each of us to examine our own practice and behavior. May we cultivate genuine compassion, cast aside our pride, and nurture a heart that seeks true serenity. If today's story has helped or moved you, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts. Have you ever felt lost in your own practice? I'd love to hear about it in the comments, and we can explore the topic together. Thank you for watching. May we all find true peace and wisdom on our spiritual paths. See you next time.